this lake is an underground volcano. And when it split open and then eventually filled full of water, you came up with the Sea of Galilee. And the Sea of Galilee, they have three different levels. From the shore, it gradually got deep until about 200 feet out all the way around. And then they have the depths where the bottom just fell out and like we're in the middle, we're not quite, but we're close to the middle now. And so this depth here, whereas over there was between 3 and 15 feet. Now you're about 180 feet straight down, and just the whole bottom dropped out. But at the bottom of this lake is a small rock crust of dried, not dried, but cooled lava. And that crust is about 3 feet deep, and that is what's protecting us from being in boiling water right now. And below that crust is still a molten lava and a river of molten lava that's below us. Now the Sea of Galilee is very unique in that it's the only place in the world that has a phenomenon that cannot be explained. This phenomenon, sometimes it happens 2 or 3 times a year. Sometimes happens 1 year and not again for another 100 years. It happens this month, again next month, again 2 months from now, then not again for 400 years. The last time this phenomenon happened on this lake was at the 6-Day War. It happened on June 7th, 1967. And what happened unexpectedly, without warning, no one can predict it. All of a sudden, this thin rock crust in the bottom breaks open, and this huge gas boiling hot bubble explodes up through the depths and when it hits the water, the surface of the water, it just explodes up into the air and keeps pushing. And then when it gets to sea level air, because the air, doesn't drop down much, it goes straight across at sea level. When it hits that, then it causes a violent reaction, causing the wind to begin to stir, and then it pushes outward at extreme speeds, hits the mountains, comes back around and hits the middle of the lake again. And it causes a tremendous storm like you never realize. Now, if you're in the shore or in the deep fishing, then you get very little wave, very little wind, or nothing at all. Very calm like it is right now. But if you're in the center of the lake when this thing happens, regardless of the size of the boat, you go down in about 15 seconds. This, no escape. And so, Jesus had just finished feeding the multitudes over here approximately in this area. He told his disciples to go into the other side, get into the ship, go into the other side. Now the ship that they talked about, if you recall, Jesus said that he saw them struggling with the oars. Is that right? Not with the sails. Okay, these were with the oars, which means that this was a large troop ship. The Romans had these troop carriers that went from one side to the next. The Roman 10th Legion was on this side, the 7th on this side. They communicated with one another. They went back and forth with these huge troop carriers, and if there was enough room, you could book passage on this. And this is the one that they booked passage on, and these were operated by rowers. Okay, the rowers, the movie Ben-Hur, you remember that? Okay, the same type of ship. They have 3 levels of rowers. You had the top layer, which was called the row layers. Then you had the second level, which were they called the standards, and they were the ones that did most of the total consistent rowing. Then you had the bond slave. The bond slave were the bottom rowers, and those are the ones that never left their seat. If you were a bond slave, you were there for life. You stayed in that seat for life, and those that were up above you, they never moved either. And when they had to go nature's call, the ones at the bottom, they received all the effects all of their life. And so these were the type of ones that went across that you could book passage on. And so Jesus told his disciples to go into one of these and go across to Bethsaida be in that direction. Now, this storm would come up, cannot be predicted at all. And so Jesus said, go on the other side, and he constrained them, which means I'll be quite upset if you don't do it. Go to the other side, and I'll meet you over there. And so they got into the ship, and they weren't happy about it. And Jesus said, I'm going to go and pray in the mountains. Now, the closest mountains that we have are the small ones right here. But from those small mountains, it's very difficult to see what is out in the middle of the lake. You can't really see what's going on. And so the ones that you can see what's going on in the center of the lake and what's happening is probably the mountain that at that time was called Suronase, which is back there in the background, which is about 5 to 7 miles away from where we are right now. Now, when the disciples got out into the middle of this lake, and like I said, the last time this happened was 1967, the Syrians were invading, trying to attack the Israeli positions in the Six-Day War in Tiberias, and they set sail from the Golan Heights shore back over in that area with 300 Syrian soldiers. When they got in the center of this lake, this phenomenon happened, and all the Syrians went to the bottom of the lake. That's the last time that it happened. But it could not be predicted. And so when Jesus told these guys to get in the boat and go across, they didn't know what was going to happen, neither did anybody else. But once they got to the center of the lake, this phenomenon hit again. And it hit with such force that regardless of how big the ship was, it was going down, period. But then the Word of God says that Jesus was in the mountains praying, and he looked out and he saw them. Now, my eyes aren't too good, but if a person even had the best vision that you could have, I don't know how you could look in the middle of the night. This was 3 o'clock in the morning, okay? At night, and not only just see this lake out here, but to identify what boat was out here that his disciples were in. There were many of them that was going back and forth. And not only that, to even see that they were having problems with the ropes. I don't know how he did that. But even the fact that he did see them, they were in the midst of the storm at that time. And so they could go down any second. And the maximum amount of time was probably no more than a minute, usually about 15 or 20 seconds, and that ship is gone down because of the intensity. Now I'm sure the disciples, when this thing hit, I can imagine what they would be thinking. Perhaps all of us would be thinking the same thing. It says, Jesus, where are you? If you were with us, we just saw you break the bread and the fish, so we know if you were with us, something could happen. Something would happen that would be for our benefit. But where are you? You're up there someplace. Are you here? Are you here? Are you here? We know you're up there, but you're not here. And even if Jesus was with an animal, a donkey or a horse or a camel, and took off as fast as he could run, he would not even get to the shoreline before this ship that was in this location sunk. And even when he got to the shore, how was he going to get out to them? Because I'm sure that anyone up there that rented boats, they would not want to rent a boat to anyone that's going to row out here in the middle of this big storm. So even if Jesus was able to get to them and get to the shoreline in time, which was impossible, how was he going to help them? But somehow, in some way, at 3 o'clock in the morning, Jesus got from those highest mountains that you see back in the background, the highest mountains that you see, not only to the shore, but began to walk on the surface of this water that we're on right now, before that ship sunk. Now, when you talk about the miracles of Jesus' ministry, that's one of the ones that can't be explained. Throughout the history of mankind up to that point, not even in mythology had anyone ever conceived of the idea of anyone walking on water. There have been divisions of water, even in the history of the Jews. You had Moses parting the water, Joshua, Elijah, Elisha. But no one had ever walked on water. Even in Greek mythology, Babylonian mythology, Roman mythology, no one ever walked on the water. So it was not even anything that would enter into the mind of a person. It's impossible. So that's not even a fable that can be thought about. And so at that time, the teaching among the Romans was that if you were destined, if the gods wanted you to die that night, then someone would appear to you who had been killed on the sea, and their ghost would appear to you, and they would then escort you to the land of the dead. And so, can you imagine how the disciples felt when they looked up and saw Jesus walking on the water? The first thing they felt like that perhaps Jesus tried to save them. He was drowned, and now his ghost was coming to escort them to the place of death, because they could not even conceive of the fact that anyone could walk on the water. But when Jesus spoke to them in the middle of the storm, then they realized it was him. And now we can understand the scriptures when it says great fear fell upon them. Because not only did Jesus save his disciples, but Jesus also saved the Romans who were there on the ship with him. All of those soldiers and a guy by the name of Julius Captus. Julius Captus was the one who made the official record of this. He was the centurion in charge of that particular group. Went down in Roman annals and Roman history as an actual event, testified to by Julius, the Roman centurion, all the soldiers, and the disciples about Jesus. Way up there, not only saw them, which was a miracle in itself, but got here before it sunk, and then calmed the storm that no one could predict, no one could calm, and no one could understand. But when you're the creator of the world, you understand all things. So now you have an opportunity to be on this same water source that event happened, pretty much in the same location that it took place. Questions? Yes.
This size boat here, would they have used anything
This size boat would be used in the deep, not the depths, the deep, which would be from about to about 200 feet. This would be a typical fishing boat. They would have a sail on this about this size.
This is about the size people would have had what we call like all the fish.
This would have been the size boat that Peter would have had what they call all fish. And how they catch those fish is during that time of that great storm. When the storm is out here, the fish go absolutely nuts, and they try to escape it, and so they run into the deep, try to escape this horror that's going on out here. And if you happen to be fishing out here in the deep, whenever that takes place, you can get an entire year's catch within 2 minutes. And that's what happened in Peter's case. The storm happened over here, but they were secure back on the shores and in the deep part, and with no problems whatsoever. And so that's when Peter caught all of his fish as a result of that. But yes, it would be about this size alone. Holly.
Why does this happen? Is there something that precipitates it?
No one knows why it happens. And it's a phenomenon that has yet to be explained, and the scientists are still working on it. Geologists are still working on it, on why and how you predict it, and no one can. They can certainly predict close on the volcanic eruptions, but underground volcanic activity, they still haven't figured that one out yet.
And is the site where the rock breaks open, is it the same? Like,
It's
is it
not
always
the same
spot?
location.
Okay.
No. And sometimes it happens on the north side, sometimes on the south side, sometimes in the middle, sometimes all across.
It'll always be deep
was in the depths, the deepest part. And so the next time you read the story of Jesus walking on the water, now you can relate to it. Now you can see where he was, where he ended up.